Welcome to ChangeGear Codeless Configuration, 15-minute customizations to support the business, a webinar series presented by SunView Software. My name is Justin Rue. I'm a product marketing manager here at SunView. I'll also have Juan Ramirez, my system engineer, on the webinar today. He'll be walking us through the demonstration of ChangeGear. So just to touch on a brief agenda, we're going to spend a little time talking about traditional business problems around service desk customizations, and we'll go over a use case that Juan's going to use during his demo. We'll wrap everything up with a nice summary, and we'll talk a little bit more about other resources that you might find educational. So traditional problems with customizing more legacy service desk systems, we'll start with requiring development resources. We found that a lot of these legacy systems do not have a codeless way of making simple configuration or customization changes, such as adding a field to a form or maybe adding a workflow action or automation. So requiring those development resources, they're often bogged down with a lot of other projects that are more high priority than just adding that field to a form. So it's difficult to get them on board and to get them to help you out, especially to do it on a consistent basis. Also, with that, when you finally do get a resource, you're going to be having to go through a lot of design and testing back and forth. A lot of that can create some open opportunities for miscommunication. And because of all these, getting yourself a resource, working on the design and testing, we could take weeks to implement simple customizations to a legacy system. At the end of the day, when you go to upgrade that system, maybe from one version to the next, or even if you skipped a couple and need to move a couple of revs forward, you're going to see that a lot of those customizations and custom code that have been put in place are going to break with your upgrade. So we want to try and avoid that with a more modern solution. We're going to talk more about that here as we wrap up, but let's move into the use case here and get you right into the demo. So our compliance manager has informed us of a new rule that states that all requests with critical impact to the business must now be reviewed by the requester's manager. That manager, their comments are now required for compliance purposes, and we have to get this completed ASAP. We need these customizations in the system and tested as soon as possible because we have an audit coming up, and this is key for that audit. So how does that impact the ChangeGear administrator? Well, here are some of the things that they're going to be thinking about when they go to design and test and actually implement these changes. We want to create a new comment form. We also want to create a field for manager comments. We want to make those comments required. We want to add automations on ticket submittals. So if your ticket's urgency equals emergency, then we have a new route that we need to take. Also implementing new workflow routing for not just emergency requests, but if it's not an emergency, we want to be able to skip that step because it's not necessary. That's another automation we'll put in place. And then we need to add a pop-up so it prompts the manager. When they go to review that request, they should know I need to put in some comments here that will be stored within the ticket and can be viewed moving forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Juan so he can kick off this demonstration. You're going to see today that in ChangeGear, to make some of these changes will be very simple. We're going to do this in minutes. We're going to do it with no coding, ultimately bringing a lot of value to the business. So I'm going to stop there, Juan. I'm going to let you take it over. We're really looking forward to seeing what you have prepared for us today. It's all yours.
Thank you, Justin. And to implement that business rule, we're going to be accessing the admin console. And we're going to be doing a few things. The first thing we're going to be doing is adding a new field into the active form. We're going to be using the incident management module, but that will apply to any module that you're using. I'm going to open up the forms. I'm going to look at my active form. In your case, maybe the default form. My case is the default version 2 that I'm using as an active form. We're going to go into the designer toolbox and add the new field. And we add new fields just by clicking on the new action or the new button and selecting the type of field. In this case, it's going to be a long text, as we may be capturing long comments from our manager. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call it Manager Comments, and we're going to give it a caption as well. In order to add that field into the form, we have to scroll down all the way at the end until we find the user-defined fields we are prefixed with a UDF. We locate Manager Comments and we drag and drop it into the form. And you can add it anywhere on the form. It does not matter. I'm just adding it under the incident type. I'm going to make it also a little bit, I'm going to increase the height a bit to give the manager more space to see those comments. And we are going to save that form. As we're adding a new field, we need to apply those changes into the schema. So this may take a minute. So now that these changes have been saved into the database, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new comment form. So the use case is telling us that we need to capture those manager comments, within the manager review state. And we're going to make that require. And one way that you can use it's using comment forms. So we're going to take a new comment form or the active comment form, and we're going to customize that form. We're going to eliminate anything on the form as we're creating a new form, and we're going to be adding that newly created comment manager's comments form. We're going to drag and drop that field into the form. We have some empty space in the top and in the bottom to make sure it's centralized. And we're going to make that field require. We're going to save the form. As this is an out-of-the-box form, we're going to have to give it a new name. We're going to call it manager comment. We're going to be creating a new comment form, and we're going to click OK. Now that we're done with the forms, we may have to perform an IIS reset to make sure those fields, that newly created field, it's is refreshed or is presented into the form. All right, so once the IIS reset is done, now we can go into the workflow. Again, we're going to be using the incident management workflow. So I'm going to select my active workflow. In this case, it's the factory or default. And we're going to edit that workflow. So the business case is telling us that we need to create a manager review state. Our managers need to review every ticket that the urgency equals emergency. So the first thing we're going to do is add in that process state. We create a new state, and we're going to call it manager comment. Or manager review, I'm sorry. We're going to put the same name in the workflow status bar so we can show that as a state in the form. So how do we connect that manager review into the process? We're going to edit the submit action, right click, edit, and we're going to change the end state. So now the submit is going to be ending up on the manager review state. We are also going to be creating a new transition to move that process from the manager review state into the newly created or new state. We're going to create a new action called review. I'm going to click enter. And that action, we're going to set it up as a show comments pop-up. So we're going to make sure that we're showing that newly created comment form to capture those managers' comments. And we're going to call that newly created form that we just added into the system. So how now do we say, or do we implement the business rule itself? We're going to edit that submit action, and we're going to create, we're going to click on that submit action, and we're going to edit or add a couple automations, with the business logic. The first automation is going to be to assign that ticket to the manager or the requester's manager. So for that, we're going to be using an reassign action. We're going to change the name to assign to manager. I'm going to click the ellipsis on the assign to, and we're going to be using a dynamic role. This is a feature from ChangeGear, so now we can look for a requester's manager's dynamic role. So no matter who the user is requesting that ticket, we're going to look into the user's profile, and we're going to assign that ticket to the manager of that user. We have to set a condition, as we don't want that action to be performed all the time. So we're going to set a condition that only performs that action whenever the urgency equals emergency. We're going to click OK. The next thing we're going to do is going to be create another action, but this one is going to be a trigger workflow action. So while we're doing this, because we want to make sure that if it's not a ticket with an urgency of emergency, we want to make sure that we continue our process and we do not stop at that manager review state. So we're going to select the action, newly created review action from that manager review state, and we're going to set a condition for that action. And the condition is that it's only going to be performed whenever the urgency does not equal now emergency. So you may have noticed that the assign to manager is going to be performed when the business rule or the criteria is met. And then the trigger workflow action is going to kick off that review action automatically whenever the urgency does not equal emergency. You're going to save that workflow. This is an out-of-the-box workflow that we're using, default, so we're going to have to assign a new name. We're going to click OK and wait for it to compile. All right, as that new workflow that we created is not active, before we actually show this on the web, we have to make that workflow active. So we're going to do that. So now that the workflow is active, we're going to go back to we're going to go to the web client to show you that workflow implemented in ChangeGear. The first thing you may need to do is do an admin refresh, as we're adding a new form and adding new fields and modifying a workflow. You want to make sure that you refresh your web client. Let's go ahead and create a new ticket here. Click on the new button. We're going to set up a requester. For this case, I'm going to use, myself as the requester. So the business rule is telling us that the assign to will be set to the requester's manager. So we can click on the user's profile next to the requester label and look that the user's manager, the requester's manager, is Joe Manager. In this case, once we submit the action, the assign to will be automatically set to Joe Manager. Let's create the ticket information. We're going to set up a type. We're going to set up an impact, urgency, and priority, and a due date. You may notice as well that the manager's comments field is also available on that form. So as I submit the action, the automations are going to kick in. We're going to evaluate the urgency, and because it's an emergency type of urgency, we're going to be stopping on the manager's review state. And notice how the assign to is set up as Joe Manager. Let's go ahead and create another ticket, but this one is not going to be set up as an emergency. I'm going to use myself as the requester as well. We're going to set up a summary. We're going to set up a type, impact, urgency, and priority. Notice how the urgency is set to low. There's no assign to. We're going to click submit. Automations are going to be evaluating those conditions or those business rules. And notice how we have bypassed that manager review state. We are on the new state, business as usual. No user has been assigned to that ticket yet. Let's click out of here, close that form, and let's log in as Joe Manager. He's their manager. He's my manager in this case. We're going to go into the incident module. I'm going to look for those, for that last ticket that was created, 1410. We're going to open that ticket and we're going to notice that we are on the manager review state. And we're going to click on review. And there's another business rule kicking in now. So we're going to pop up that new comment pop-up form with those comments that are required. So the manager has to enter comments before continuing to the next state. We're going to click OK. So notice now how the manager comments have been captured into that newly created manager comments field. Now the state has been moved, or the ticket has been moved into the new state. So you saw how easy it was to create that new that business rule without any coding at all, just leveraging ChangeGear automation capabilities within the workflow process. You also have noticed how easily it was to create a new form and create new fields to those forms and have those available to your end users. Well, that concludes our presentation. Back to you, Justin.
Thanks, Juan. That was perfect. Really appreciate your time on that. So let's summarize what we just saw. We're going to talk a little bit about traditional customizations again versus the value of going codeless, as we like to call it. So with those traditional customizations, we see that you need very specialized resources, developers, people who have a lot on their plate and may not see adding a form to a field, or a field to a form, adding an automation to a workflow. They may not see that as a high priority project, so it can be difficult to get them on board. Got a lot of design and testing back and forth, leaving open opportunities for miscommunication. Can take weeks, if not longer, to complete, and when you go to upgrade, can cause a lot of problems, requiring more specialized resources. As you go to upgrade, it can get much more expensive now to upgrade from new version to new version. With the value of going codeless, we talk about no development skills. It's easy to design and test, as you saw today. We can complete this in minutes, not days or weeks or even longer. And when you go to upgrade with ChangeGear, that actually takes it, packages up those customizations, and moves it with the upgrade, requiring no specialized resources to do that. So again, less investment. What does this equal? We talk about ChangeGear, the customization capabilities. We today, within minutes, created a custom form and a field that went on that form. We created a custom pop-up. We created a new workflow state, created a workflow automation, and we forced a required field all without coding in minutes. So just wanted to talk about the power of ChangeGear's customizability. So if you liked what you saw, please continue to go through our Learn database, sunviewsoftware.com/learn. A ton of resources, not only on the product, but also resources that could educate you if you're preparing to replace a legacy system where you might have had some of these customization problems. Also testimonials, hear from other people who are using ChangeGear now and who are SunView customers. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for viewing the webinar. Juan, thank you for your time. Really hope you got something out of it. Be on the lookout for more webinars in the future. And if you need anything at all, sales@sunviewsoftware.com. We would love to help you. Thanks so much.